Do you love the Tabernacle Choir? This year, the choir's music is everywhere you are. Listen to your favorite choir songs and music and the spoken word anytime you want on Alexa by simply enabling the skill.
Alexa, play music in the spoken word.
Now playing music in the spoken word.
You can also download the Tabernacle Choir app, subscribe to the choir on YouTube, listen on Spotify, and have access to all their wonderful music. Happy listening.
It's the best station, period.
Let's be honest. These guys have the best job on the planet.
You come to work in a frickin' bathrobe?
So if you're out there working hard, you should also expect your radio hosts to put in an honest day's work. So of course, Jake and Ben are live at 5 with the biggest headlines and the best analysis in Utah. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5. The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time for Live at 5, brought to you by our friends at Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary, 855-TRAJAN-1, or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com.
This song came out in 2004, by the way.
Did it?
So, no. Not the song.
Then it was a different
of.
Blink
different
song?
Anyways,
I'd
neither
have to
here nor
look it
there.
up.
Yeah. Not important.
Not important. Ben, this morning, PK was hanging out with Riley Jensen because DJ is off on vacation, I think. Actually, I have no idea what DJ is doing. Something very DJ-like.
Yep, something important.
What would a DJ vacation be? Something like definitely a Sports Hall of Fame type vacation.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
Cooperstown or
something like something
along those lines.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that?
But Jay Hill came on with them this morning.
Good get.
And, Jay's awesome. He's a great interview. He's now the defensive coordinator in Michigan. Let's play a clip from Jay because they did talk to him about moving on to Michigan. And here's Jay Hill talking about bringing Witt's defense to Ann Arbor.
You spent over a decade on Kyle Whittingham's staff. And then obviously you were the head coach at BYU, transitioned to BYU, made them one of the top defenses in the country over the past 3 years. If you think back on your career and on those transitions, what core defensive philosophy has traveled with you through every stop? And is there anything that you've had to change at Michigan, either as far as philosophy goes or personnel?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I watched Kyle when I was a player and a young coach call this defense. I watched Gary Anderson call it. I watched Kalani call it. Everybody puts their own flavor and flair on it. I got to call it at Weber State. And one thing that was cool about that is I could try new things and it might not work. And you know what? Probably nobody knew. And Weber State was so amazing for me because I could really pinpoint and hone in on what I wanted to become as a play caller, as a head coach, as just an assistant coach. I just had so much growth and development. So going back to the question, I believe you got to be able to stop the run. No matter what the offensive scheme is, because they're all different, you got to be able to stop the run. I believe in man coverage when you can do it. Now, I'm not just going to force man just to force it, but I do believe in man coverage because it makes quarterbacks throw tight windows. And if you do it properly with good technique, everybody should be covered. Beyond that, I believe in keeping quarterbacks on their toes and not knowing what's going on in the secondary. So I think we do a good job with disguises. And then I want to keep them on their toes by not knowing if we're in man or cover 2 or cover 3 or whether we're blitzing. So we tried to do a good job of disguising, a good job of mixing it up. So if you're asking me like what I believe in, keep quarterbacks guessing on what's going on, make sure you can play some man coverage, and you got to do things to stop the run.
All right, so that was Jay talking about taking the Witt defense to Michigan, which I think is a great storyline and something that I will be following.
Absolutely.
Witt's defense at a big-time school.
A Big Ten school specifically.
At Michigan, I think is a huge storyline. I think whether Jay and Witt and Jason Beck succeed or fail, I think is a huge storyline. I think what Utah and BYU have done to replace those coaches, also a big storyline. I think that Michigan is a big storyline here this year. But, Ben, there was some controversy on the voicemails, and I'm curious. I want to get listeners' opinion. I want to know. We've got to program shows.
Yep.
We've got to talk about things. We have to find things that are interesting and talk about what our listeners want to talk or want to hear about. A grand misconception about sports radio. We don't talk about what we want to talk about.
Correct.
Hopefully we're talking about what listeners want to listen to. And sometimes we are better at that than others. But rest assured, this radio show is not here for us. It's here for the listeners.
Pulling back the curtain.
Point. Yeah.
Some of the things we talk about are probably not the things you and I are most specifically interested in. That doesn't mean we're not interested in. We like the job.
Sure.
We enjoy what we're talking about. But the storylines we care about or are more focused on may not be what most of the audience is interested in.
Well, I had a coworker once who said, "You got to talk about what you're passionate about." And it's like, dude, do you think I'm passionate about the backup point guard battle for the Utah Jazz? No.
Not particularly.
But do people want to hear about the backup? I'm picking some random.
Sure,
but
right.
Backup point guard battle for the Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's what people want to hear about. So it's kind of funny. So I think that Michigan this year will be a relevant topic. I will certainly be following it. But let's listen to a couple of these voicemails that were left for DJ and PK, but we are hijacking. Let's start off. Let me get a name here, Christian. Let's start off with Braden and what he had to say.
Okay, so here's my thing. I see no reason as to why we're actually talking about Michigan. The moment that Jay Hill and the moment that Kyle Whittingham and everybody at Utah left Utah or BYU, then, I don't know, to Utah sports, they became irrelevant. I mean, yeah, sure, they're still recruiting here, but don't give them the airwaves. Stick to our Utah teams.
All right. There's Braden's thoughts.
Let me ask you this. Who do you think Braden is a fan
of? Turn signaling.
Other than that, which thank you for using your signal.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Braden. I don't know. Why?
I'm curious if we will find a theme of who wants to know less about this, whether they're a BYU fan or a Utah fan.
Well, if you're asking who's probably more bitter about the topic, I would guess Utah fans.
That would be my guess also.
But I would guess Utah fans are also way more dialed in. Like, I have no idea what Braden, what kind of fan he is. But if he's a Utah fan, he's going to be watching everything that happens in Michigan.
I would think so, too.
Because it is directly related to a decision made by your university to basically move on from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan Scalley. It's entirely related.
It's a perfect scenario. You can love Whit and be mad at Utah and hope he succeeds in Michigan to prove Mark Harlan or whoever wrong. Or you can hate Whit and hate watch the Wolverines and hope that they lose every game. It's really easy to watch, though. It's really easy to talk about and care about.
Let's now hear from Randy, who also weighs in on the topic.
Morning, guys. Long-time listener to the program. Long-time BYU fan. But I was born in Columbus, Ohio. When I hear you guys start talking Michigan football, I reach up and hit the button on the radio and shut it off. I'm not going to sit here and listen to anything about Michigan football. So, have an enjoyable season. I'm out.
Hardcore.
Can't believe people are still ending phone calls with "I'm out." Speaking of things that are from like 30 years ago.
Uh-huh.
But now, maybe he's a special circumstance because obviously he's an Ohio State fan as well as a BYU fan.
Uh-huh.
So particularly doesn't like Michigan. But from a BYU standpoint, how Jay Hill does at Michigan is absolutely relevant because of the candidates to be a head coach at BYU someday, and I'm not predicting Kalani's demise by any means, but someday, Jay Hill is on that list. And
Did you say at Michigan or at BYU?
Or at BYU.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Also
if
at
I
Michigan.
said Michigan, but
Also
maybe
at Michigan,
also
yeah.
at Michigan. You know, how he performs is certainly relevant to BYU. And BYU's certain trajectory as a defense under Kalani was a lot of mediocrity until he hired Jay Hill and the defense went to the next level. So now does that magic continue with our buddy K-pop going up? We're going to be golden. That is a big story. can Kelly Papinga live up to the legacy that Jay Hill created at BYU, even though it was a short one?
Mm-hmm.
It was a very relevant one.
Of course.
Their rise in the Big 12 coincided with Jay Hill and his defense.
We had Mitch Harper on the show earlier, and he said there's a world where you can conceivably talk about Kalani finding his name into the same conversation as Lavelle. And Mitch says, I wouldn't have believed that, I can't remember what he said, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What happened 3 years ago? Jay Hill jumped from Weber State to BYU and changed everything. That doesn't mean Kalani's not a great coach. I'm a big Kalani believer. Jay, his arrival at BYU was immediately related to BYU's liftoff as a serious contender in the Big 12. Absolutely. So I'm totally with you.
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Your coffee would never get cold. Your flight would always be on time. And your mattress would always respond to you and your unique sleep needs. Sleep Number mattresses are designed to respond to your body and shift with your changing life, helping you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.
So my question, I guess, to our listeners is...
Is that all of our voicemails? Okay.
Yeah, for now. My question to our listeners is Michigan, is that a relevant topic? At Michigan.
But yes, I think I think it is. In fact, I think there's a real argument, contrary to Randy and
Braden,
that Witt and Michigan and Jay Hill might actually be the most interesting storyline in college football locally this year. I think there's a world where both BYU and Utah are good and not great, and are third and fourth place teams in the Big 12. I hope not. It'd be way more fun to talk about Utah and BYU being top 10 teams and competing for the college football playoff. It's just not guaranteed, and you're one injury away always. That because Witt can't get injured and lose his job, and Jay Hill is there, that ends up being a storyline that I actually think personally is more unique than another good, not great season from BYU or another good, not great season from Utah, even though Morgan Scalley taking over as a head coach is a huge deal. Papinga coming in as the defensive coordinator is a huge story. I do think there's a world where Witt being at Michigan is a more interesting story.
More interesting. Yeah. I mean,
it's certainly more nationally relevant.
Well, way more, but that's because it's Michigan.
But it's not like we're going to talk about it because it's nationally relevant. We're talking about it because it's Kyle Whittingham, who was the most important coach in our state over the last 20 years.
Well, we never saw Lavelle coach somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw Frank Beamer coach somewhere else.
Never saw Jerry Sloan coach somewhere else.
Never, yeah. I mean, I think that makes it relevant. But
Jerry did technically before the Jazz, but sure.
Yeah, after though, we're talking about these
after their legacies.
Coaches had these legacy runs, and then we just didn't see them coach anywhere else. I do think that it makes it relevant in and of itself. I mean, your legendary coach is somewhere else coaching right after he got done, and the fact that Utah ran Kyle Whittingham out. And maybe people will say that's a little extreme, but let's be honest. If you lowball the coach with a crappy contract that they're never going to take, that is just as good as asking them to leave. That's what El Cheapo did to Calabro.
Tiago Splitter.
Wow, you could say that too.
Oh, yeah, Kevin Calabro. Yeah,
except
absolutely.
Except for Tiago Splitter is far from
a
legend.
But yes, to the play-by-play voice of
Kevin Calabro, he said the offer that I received was subprime. They wanted him to leave, so they offered him a crappy deal that he could never accept.
It was untenable.
The details in that contract that they offered Kyle Whittingham were no coach would have taken those.
Correct.
They took away all of his power.
Correct.
They took away all of his authority to make decisions. They basically gave it to Morgan. They said he had to march up to the athletic director's office even to make the most basic of decisions. He was never going to take that.
Correct.
So running out the established guy only for him to take a better job right away, I find really interesting. And I guess whether fans will admit that it's interesting or not maybe is the question. But, to get that reaction, I guess the reason I found this segment interesting is because I'm surprised Jay, who's beloved by everybody.
Should be everybody. He did nothing but make everyone better he touched here.
Utah, Weber State, BYU. Even Utah State tried to hire him, a couple of times? I mean, a dude who came on this station weekly when he was the head coach at Weber State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we wanted to have him on as the head coach at Weber State because he's charismatic and everybody loves Jay Hill. For a good reason. He's a good coach and a good member of the community, person, all those things. I wouldn't expect somebody like Jay to generate that. Not that it was Jay hate by any means, but, we're done with these guys. You can't talk about Michigan. I don't know. I think it's compelling.
Not to argue with the opinions of Braden or Randy, because they're
relevant.
and they're telling the truth.
That's why we're playing it.
That they are calling in to leave a voicemail because this is how they feel. I think that's totally fair. But as you mentioned, we do have to program the show, and how much do we talk about things, and somebody who specifically has focused on the Utah Jazz, I can tell you, behind the scenes, I'll pull back the curtains and tell you the two biggest stories I've written about the Utah Jazz, I think, in the last 4 years, since the rebuild started, were Donovan Mitchell got engaged and Rudy Gobert's girlfriend or whatever, baby mama, split. Neither of those players has played for the Utah Jazz since 2022.
In quite some time, sure.
And the biggest stories about the Utah Jazz over the last 4 years, that includes 8 draft picks, 3 lottery picks, 4 lottery picks, and all this Lowry Markkanen becoming an all-star. Yeah, the all-star game being here. The biggest stories are Donovan Mitchell got engaged and Rudy Gobert's baby mama left. Or Rudy broke up with her. Yeah, we're going to be paying attention to Kyle Whittingham. And when I say we, I don't mean Jake and I mean the state of Utah.
Well, here, all our call-ins, what they're kind of getting at. When Gary Anderson went from Wisconsin to Oregon State, and Scott Barnes was the athletic director at Oregon State, there were hosts on this station, including myself, that had relationships specifically with Gary Anderson. And Gary, being a Utah guy, and Gary likes us and likes doing radio, would come on even though he was the head coach at Oregon State. And so people started clowning us, calling us 1280 the Dam.
That's funny.
Or 1280 the Beef, which was super funny.
Very funny.
And you know what? Those listeners had a point. We love Gary. And Utah had an association with Oregon State. But it's not like Oregon State was USC or...
Correct.
It's not like Oregon State. They were even in a different division. So it's not even like they were entirely relevant.
Yeah.
So when we got criticized for that, I kind of thought, yeah, you probably have a point.
Yeah, it might be fair.
I mean, I don't know how much Oregon State content we really need to get out there because of a coach who coached at Utah and Utah State 2 stops before. I think this is different. I think this is different because of the way that it went down, the way that they left. Gary Anderson left Utah State for Wisconsin because he was the hot coach, not because Utah State ran him out.
Did Utah lose a running backs coach to USC?
Yes.
Do you remember his name?
No.
Did we ever talk about him?
Probably not.
It's not a story. That actually doesn't matter that much.
Well,
it matters internally. That matters with the minutia of Utah.
That coach wasn't a head coach. I think it's
no,
different.
exactly. That's exactly my point.
Right.
It's exactly my point. I don't think there's just this infatuation or lack of imagination of why you would talk about Gary Anderson at Wisconsin or at Oregon State, or why we would talk about Kyle Whittingham at Michigan, or why we would have talked about Kalani at Penn State,
yeah.
Or why we've talked about Mark Pope at Kentucky. Now, we haven't gone crazy about Mark Pope on Kentucky, but we followed it. We'd probably bring it up maybe once a week. When they were struggling, we talked about it more than that. It is an interesting storyline. That stuff does matter.
This was before you guys, but we talked about Urban in Florida a lot.
All the time.
In 2005.
Absolutely, I'm sure. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
So there will be some fans who don't want to hear Michigan. There are going to be people who that is a very sore subject because they either love or hate Kyle Whittingham. And I think that's totally understandable. I'm not here to dismiss anyone's opinion, but the idea that it's like not a relevant storyline is false.
I agree. But I'm curious to hear feedback. That's why I wanted to play
Absolutely.
that. I bet,
I'm glad they called in.
Yeah, I'm glad they called in too, and I'm sure that they're not the only people with that opinion. So if you want to weigh in, do the voicemail feature on the KSL Sports app. Download it, and it's pretty easy. You can record a message and send it right to Christian here in the control room. And we, of course, always encourage you to do so. We will have more coming up next. It's Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Your coffee would never get cold. Your flight would always be on time. And your mattress would always respond to you and your unique sleep needs. Sleep Number mattresses are designed to respond to your body and shift with your changing life, helping you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number. To a good life sleep.
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Just top.